Okay, this is a quickie video to kind of help you with the assembly of the IC voltage regulator. In your schematic, the IC voltage regulator has 3 pins, pin 3, pin 1, and pin 2. The IC voltage regulator is set up this way. You have the body like so. You have a heat sink like so. This is made of metal. It will get hot. And you have 3 pins sticking out, and they are called 1, 2, and 3. And as they're called 1, 2, and 3, the number 1 is an input. So this is an in. Number 2 is an output. So this is out. And number 3 is input. Sorry. Number 1 is adjust. Adjust. So adjust, out, and in. So adjust is pin 1, output is pin 2, and input is pin 3. So as we look at the discrete IC voltage regulator right here, my pin 1 is the adjust pin, and the adjust pin has to make connection with several things. It's got to make connection with the pot. So this is the red wire for the pot right over here. And it also has to make connection with pin 1, also has to make connection with the wiper of the pot, which is right here. Your green wire is the wiper of the pot that you've seen, the green wire in the videos so far. So pin 1 is the adjust, and it makes connection with one wire of the pot, another wire of the pot, and it also makes connection with your 240 ohm resistor. Now the 240 ohm resistor from the other side of the 240 ohm resistor does connect with pin 2, which is the output. So watch my 240 ohm resistor on this side come over to here, and it is connected through my orange jumper to pin number 2 of the IC voltage regulator that you can see there. I've expanded my connection to 2 parts of the breadboard, so it gives you a little better clarity what's happening in this space rather than bunch everything up on just one half of the breadboard. And then pin 3 is your input. Now pin 3 is, there's pin 3 right there, and the input is going to come from this gray wire if I'm going to hook this up to the filter regulator. Now before you do that, in part 1, you do have pin 3 on the back side here hooked up with a jumper wire right here to the red rail. So pin 3 is hooked up to the red rail. This is where your 28 volt DC will come from. So your power supply for part 1, 28 volt DC, goes to the red rail and will feed pin 3 through this yellow jumper wire. You do your photos, you do your measurements, life is good. When you are done with part 1, you must remove this jumper wire from this red rail, because that's where your transformer may be hooked up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this jumper wire, yank this puppy up, because in part 2 you do not want to introduce anything from the red rail to this pin 3. So what's going to happen is this. Let's turn this whole thing around. On pin 3 being the input, so on the schematic, pin 3 is the input. We have the 0.1 microfarad capacitor, and then this will then hook up to a much larger capacitor over here. This will be your 470 microfarad capacitor, and then over here will be your rectifier diode, and then over here will be your transformer. I'm going to do this way. So transformer here, the center tap is not used, and then this one goes to ground. And then the other side of the transformer is over here hooked up to AC. All right, so what happens here, your diode and a 470 microfarad capacitor, what this looks like is here. Your transformer wire will come in here, make connection to this side of the rectifier diode. The rectifier diode has the stripe pointed on the right hand side, and then it makes connection to, in my case, row 40. And on the row 40 I happen to have the 470 microfarad capacitor there, the negative side here going to the yellow jumper wire to my ground rail. So I will be feeding the rectified, filtered power from the transformer for part 2 of the lab going into this gray wire, going into pin 3, which is my input pin of my LM317. So this is what the apparatus should look like when you're ready to hook it up to the transformer. Just make sure you have removed any type of connection of pin 3 from the red rail that you used previously for part 1, and life is good. This is the 0.1 microfarad capacitor that is hooked up to the input pin, pin 3, through this orange jumper wire, through this 0.1 microfarad capacitor. That's right here. Here's pin 3, through the 0.1 microfarad capacitor to ground. The other 10 microfarad capacitor, which is the output capacitor, C2, is hooked up to pin 2 and ground. So if you take a look at this is my 10 microfarad capacitor right here. It is hooked up to this jumper wire, orange jumper wire, hooked up to pin 2 of the IC voltage regulator, and the other side of this capacitor hooks up to ground. And these, as I'm moving around, will give you the best visual image of what is happening with these connections. You can freeze this image any point in time as you're viewing this video. Potentiometer wires are here. This is one potentiometer wire, another potentiometer wire, another potentiometer wire. On this side, transformer will come in on this, and the other side of the transformer will go to the negative rail. Okay? That's it. Have fun.